I'm very pleased to commend the bill to the House.
Very good.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr Speaker.
I call the honourable member Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Labour Party wants to say absolutely clearly that we believe that this is an area where legislation is indeed needed. New Zealanders rightly expect that we will have robust regulations, certainty, confidence about those who wish to work and use resources in the EEZ, and for New Zealanders that the environment around them will be protected. Unfortunately, Mr Speaker, this bill fails to do those things. The Labour Party is very pleased that we voted against this bill, the only party to vote against this bill on the first reading. We did that then because we believed the bill was too weak. It did not provide sufficient protection and enhancement for the environment. It did not meet our international obligations. It does not provide certainty, and it does not provide an inclusive process. Sadly, though the Select Committee has changed one or two things, none of those issues has been adequately addressed, and we remain consistently opposed to this bill. Mr Speaker, before I get into any more detail on the content of the bill and the concerns we have, I also want to thank the Select Committee and the officials for the work that they did. I particularly want to acknowledge on our side of the House Moana Maki for the work that she has done on the committee. I haven't been able to attend all of the meetings that I would like to, and so Moana Maki has done an excellent job in that, and will, as the bill goes on, I'm sure, make a number of contributions. I wonder if Jackie Jean might make some contributions. Somehow doubt that that's going to happen, but the Minister, but Moana Maki is certainly somebody who was able to bring a rigour of analysis to this work during the committee, and I'm very grateful for her and other committee members for what they did. Mr Speaker, the problems with this bill start first and foremost in the purpose clause, clause 10 of the bill, because despite what the Minister might like to think, what the purpose clause does in this bill is create the pitched battle between the economy and the environment that the National Party seems determined to see continue right across our society, right across our economy, that the environment and the economy are in a battle to the death, which of course in the National Party's picture the environment must be defeated in the cause of the economy, not realising of course that in fact the only way that the economy can grow sustainably is by protecting and enhancing the environment. And that notion of the importance of the environment to enabling sustainable economic development is what is embedded in the international agreements around these issues, in particular the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And that's why people have been concerned throughout this process that this bill simply does not meet our international obligations. Now, the Minister might like to just claim that it does, but actually submitter after submitter who came to the Select Committee, Mr Speaker, told us that it didn't. And these weren't just any old people coming to a Select Committee with an axe to grind. These were people who work every day on these issues, who understand the legal ramifications of these issues. Let's start with the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, who actually came and managed to bring out the clause from the Law of the Sea Convention to make sure that we were absolutely aware of it. And this is what the Convention actually says. States have the sovereign right to exploit their natural resources pursuant to their environmental policies and in accordance with their duty to protect and preserve the marine environment. The Parliamentary Commissioner went on to say, we can pursue economic development, but we must protect the environment. The former, economic development, is optional. The latter, environmental protection, is not. That is the point of our international obligations. And to make it even clearer for the Minister, who seemed to think that legal experts around the country were agreeing that this bill was somehow magically now consistent with our international obligations, refer to the submission from the New Zealand Law Society to the Select Committee, which actually makes absolutely clear, and I'll read the purposes from their submission, the right to develop resources within the EEZ and on the continental shelf conferred under the Law of the Sea Convention and customary international law is subject to obligations to protect and preserve the marine environment. Subject to those obligations. This is not a question of some imagined balance or some imagined battle between the economy and the environment. The conventions to which New Zealand has signed up, the conventions that govern how our marine environment actually operates and is used, say clearly that development of resources is subject to the obligations. That has been lost in this purpose clause, and without bringing that back in, this is not only inconsistent with our international obligations, it's also wrong. It's wrong because it does not bring into the law the expectations of New Zealanders that we will protect and preserve our marine environment. We also have to make absolutely clear, and the Minister herself picked this up but drew the opposite conclusion from the Law Society, the EEZ and the continental shelf are actually not part of New Zealand's sovereign territory. We exercise our rights over them pursuant to the Law of the Sea Convention. So to put forward, as the government has done, legislation that actually contradicts that Law of the Sea Convention makes this legislation wrong on all those fronts. Wrong because it contradicts it, wrong because our right to be able to make this kind of law is actually pursuant to the Law of the Sea Convention, and wrong because we know that New Zealanders want to see us protect and preserve our marine environment, the very clause that comes out from the Law of the Sea Convention. So, Mr. Speaker, the purpose clause of this bill is wrong. It needs to be changed. The Labour Party, and I'm sure other parties, the Green Party and New Zealand First, will be proposing amendments through this process in the committee stages to ensure that we actually get a purpose clause that reflects our international obligations and actually reflects what New Zealanders want. New Zealanders have seen oil spills, the Gulf of Mexico, they've seen the damage that can be done out in the exclusive economic zone, out beyond the 12-mile limit, and they want to see robust protections. They want to know that our environment will be protected if people are going to be using resources in the EEZ. This bill, through its purpose clause, completely fails to do that, Mr. Speaker. There are a huge number of other issues that I could deal with, but I do want to pick up the Minister's comment around consistency with the Resource Management Act, and also to point out that once again, during the Select Committee process, submitter after submitter came to us and said we need more consistency with the Resource Management Act. The delineation between the 12-mile limit inside which the RMA operates and the 200-mile limit in which this new legislation, which is not consistent with the RMA, will operate, is merely a line on a map. It is not actually a specific place. It's not a specific thing. We need to ensure consistency. And again, this is not just opposition parties saying this, Mr. Speaker. This was submitter after submitter from all sides of the debate. From the regional councils who came to us and said they wanted... Jackie Jean says it's not true. The Taranaki Regional Council came to the committee and said they want consistency on this. It wasn't just environmental groups, it was actually across the board submitters wanting to see this kind of consistency. And that's in part because the concepts within the RMA have been tested. There is case law there. People understand what is meant by sustainable management. Under this process, new concepts, untested concepts will find their way into the law, and that will be difficult for people to manage. Nobody is saying this will be exactly the same, Mr. Speaker, as the RMA, but it should be consistent with the RMA. Mr. Speaker, there are a range of other issues, and I'm sure my colleague Moana Maki will take up a number of them as we go on. I want to specifically, in these last couple of minutes, mention the question around Māori and relationship with iwi, because I think this was an area in which universally iwi came to the committee and said that they were extremely upset by the lack of consultation, a clause that has now been amended, but I think actually can be improved even more. But also I want to put on the record that the Labour Party will be proposing amendments to include specific recognition of Moriori. That was an issue raised with the committee. We believe that is appropriate given the role of Moriori, particularly around the Chatham. So we will be proposing amendments in that regard. Mr. Speaker, this bill is flawed. We do need quality legislation that provides a robust framework that New Zealanders can have confidence in when it comes to the management of our EEZ. New Zealanders want the confidence that we will protect and preserve the marine environment as we are obliged to internationally and as we should. We will be bringing up many, many amendments because this bill fails to give New Zealanders the confidence they should have, fails to give certainty to those who want to work in the EEZ, and fails to provide a process that people can participate in. This bill should have been significantly better than this, Mr Speaker. It should have given that certainty. We will work with the government on good amendments to improve this, to make sure that we actually have a bill that is internationally consistent, that provides robust regulation, that supports New Zealanders in their concern to uphold the environment. But this bill does not do that, and we cannot support it at this stage.
I call the honourable member Nikki Wagner.